So welcome, Coach. Thank you for joining us today. We're joined by Sithembiso Pride Mkhwanazi, who is a mental wellness coach. And thank you so much for coming through and having a chat with me today. So let's get straight into it. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your story.
Thank you so much, Coach Mmakgabo. And I'm very excited to be here. I think I'm very excited when you said to me, Pride, let's do this interview, let's do this conversation, have this conversation about mental wellness, especially in October, because it's Mental Awareness Month. I was very, very excited because I feel like, we need to have more of these conversations, more conversations around mental wellness, and just doing a check-in, because it doesn't have to get, it doesn't have to get bad before you actually can have the conversation to say, I'm not okay, I'm not fine, Having said that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and why I decided that I became a mental wellness coach and how my journey's been. So a few years ago, in the beginning of my career, I think in early years of the 2011s, 2010s, having been like a very dynamic person, a person who really knew what they wanted with their life, where they wanted to go, and all of that. I found myself very anxious in the workspace, being a young Black woman at that time, who was doing advertising, and I know a lot of people have done advertising before. So yeah, as someone who was starting off in my career, I found myself to be very anxious about the work, anxious about what it is that I was doing, coming from the background that I came from, wanting to do exceptionally well, wanting to be, a Black female who was just like doing super, super well in the industry that I was in, but also feeling the pressure, because the pressure also was real. You work in a suburb, you come back home, you stay in the township, you're trying to breach the gap. You're looking at yourself, you feel like, you're not getting to where you want to get to fast enough. You're not getting to where you want to get to, and you just feel like there's a lot of stuff that is against you, but the vision in your mind is so clear. The vision in your head is just about, I want to get there, and I want to get there really fast, and also being in that environment, I was also challenged enough to meet other people, and in particular, one of my bosses that I'd worked for for a while. I remember he was a white Jewish man. The one time he looked at me and he said to me, Pride, you're young, you're Black, you're female, you're never gonna make it. And that completely blew my thoughts, it blew me away, because it actually made me feel like everything that I was feeling, he was actually now validating that, you're this young Black woman that just doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know what she's doing. You want to get to this pace that you want to get to, but you're not getting there fast enough. So therefore, you're just never going to make it. And I think for me, that's when my anxiety started, right? I was moving from job to job, moving from, one company to the next, but also just trying to chase myself. But it just was not good enough in my eyes. And I felt like, I needed someone to actually stop me for a second and say, hang on, you're doing well, you're going to be okay, everything is going to work out. But the thoughts in my head were just getting louder and louder, that, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. And that's when it actually started. That's when I actually started feeling the tension and feeling the anxiety and feeling depressed, after doing great presentations where people look at you and say, wow, you're so dynamic, wow, you're so amazing. But I had this ideal in my head, and I had this person that I'd built up, and this fear as well that was in me that made me feel like I'm never going to get there. So it didn't matter what people were saying to me. I actually felt like it's not going to I'm not going to reach the goal of being this amazing dynamic person that they're talking about. I couldn't see what they were talking about, and most of the time I had thoughts in my head that were not always so positive to me. But when the world looks at you, they look at you and they feel like you're such an amazing
Yeah.
person, you're an amazing character. But when you go home and you're by yourself, you feel like it's not, you're not good enough, you're not going to make it. And I think that it's such an important thing, because people say so many hurtful things all the time, and when you absorb some of these things, they start becoming like a tape recorder in your head, and you keep on pressing play and you keep on hearing them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how I started feeling, or the journey started for me in the anxiety space, and feeling very depressed about not getting to where I needed to get to fast enough or quick enough, and people seeing their own things but me not feeling like it was happening.
Yeah. That's so powerful what you shared. And I think it's something that would resonate with a lot of people. And like as you were talking, I was just thinking about, like, our minds are such like powerful tools that we possess, but there's something that we along the way believe and become conditioned to think that we are not in control of our minds. So when we start having these belief systems about ourselves that we're not good enough, and we're not worthy of certain things, and then we have these thoughts that play out, like you said, like a tape recorder, just going on and on and on and on. And you try to sort of like repress it, mask it somehow, and sort of go about your life and sort of like hope that it doesn't come out. You hope that other people don't see it, but it's something that you carry with you. So when we are in spaces where we're not validated and people actually validate these thoughts that we have, like, by saying all these things to us that aren't empowering, and then it feeds into these thoughts that we're having, it is such a disempowering thought, and your mind just takes over and you feel so debilitated. And because, like I said, we live in a space where we're conditioned to believe that there's nothing we can do with our minds, it is the way that it is, that you just end up feeling hopeless and helpless. And I think that's how a lot of people end up in a space where they experience mental health difficulty.
Mm.
So I think what you
Yeah,
said is, yeah.
yeah, I second you. I strongly agree with you that, that's why I always say to people, when you're in an environment that is not supporting your mental well-being, it's always good to try and find a process, if it means speaking to HR about it, or speaking to someone within the unit that can actually assist you in terms of addressing what the issues are, or also leaving an environment that does not support you mentally is very, very important, because validation in what you're doing, and validation and being in a good environment, people don't take being validated as people having to lie to you. That's a different thing. But it's how people actually communicate to each other,
Yeah.
especially now more than ever. It's such an important thing, especially in the workspace. More and more work environments need to learn how to communicate in a way that is actually tailored for certain individuals, or individuals, because you don't know what you're doing to someone. You don't know what you actually are doing to someone mentally. It's either you're breaking them even further, or you're actually encouraging them. But you need to learn an individual and understand. And this is the era of human. It's the human era right now. It's not about getting the biggest ride or getting the biggest house or anything like that. It's about how we actually, as human beings, are soft towards each other, are kinder towards each other, are supporting each other, because we've all been through so much in the last 2 years and before. But I think the last 2 years have shown us that mental wellness is such an important aspect of any person's being, especially in the work environment, in the home environment, and other spaces. So
Yeah.
it's so important for us to be aware of ourselves, aware of our words, aware of how we actually impacting each other with the things that we are saying. So yeah, that for me is such an important thing.
Yeah, and you touch on something really important to sort of like, have conversations around, because we are conditioned to believe that productivity is the way forward, especially in business and in work. And it's like, if you're not being productive in some way, then, you aren't successful and you aren't, I don't know, living up to whatever expectation that there is. But then it's important, like we said, to also live in a space of encouraging people's mental well-being. And I think there's a massive shift lately where people are talking about empathy being part of the workspace. And I think it also has to be something that we incorporate in our personal lives as well, in our relationships, in our home life, something that we carry with us, because we're living through a very tough time, and it's difficult for everybody. And even people who had not recognized that mental health is something that they needed to take seriously before are definitely waking up now to the idea that mental health is something that is to be taken seriously, because without it, it's almost like we can't then, have a very sort of like ideal picture of health. It's part of like our overall idea of health. So we can't just focus on physical health but not focus on mental health. It kind of brings me into the idea of mental wellness coaching, and how that fits in with mental health, because that's also something that people don't know about maybe, and something that might not exist in a lot of spaces quite yet, to sort of say that coaching is something that can help somebody with their mental health difficulty. Like when we think about mental health difficulty, we're always rushing to the idea of a psychologist and a psychiatrist. And it's not that I'm anti psychologists and psychiatrists, but I do feel that there is a gap definitely where people feel I might not need the services of a psychiatrist or a psychologist quite yet, or I might not even be able to afford it, so that's a very big one, especially living in South Africa right now. So I think coaching comes in a place where it can help bridge that gap, and it's something that I think we need to have more of a conversation around. What are your thoughts?
I actually agree with you, because when I stepped into the mental wellness coaching space, I did it because of so many learnings that I had actually acquired. Like I said, having worked in the environment that I worked in, very high pressured, very much, very competitive, but also not validating enough, right? And you're actually going and you're feeling a certain way. And throughout my career span, or throughout, my working life, I realized that, this is the support that I always needed, but I didn't know that I needed. I was fortunate enough that my mom is in the medical industry. She's a nurse, and she actually understands mental wellness and mental health and mental well-being. So she was always able to assist when she thought that, this now's the time for you to just take a break, relax, she understood the space, and I think for me, it took me a little bit longer to actually gather or understand that, when you talk about mental health, you're not talking about someone who's going through a psychosis, really. You're not talking about it when someone is going through, being diagnosed and they have bipolar, schizophrenia, and the likes, because mental health has different there's different diagnoses in mental health. However, it's also very important for us to also understand that it doesn't really need to get to that level. It doesn't need to get to that space, when, so this is the work that I'm currently doing in mental health and mental wellness coaching, is to help people cleanse their minds, because that's such an important thing. And when we talk about psychologists and counselors and the likes, I think there's a place for them, definitely. I think there's a place for, each and every person that actually deals with the mental health space, because some people are very, very sick, and they need to be on antidepressants, and they need that medical diagnosis, and some people need to go back into their past and actually travel that journey and actually, be helped in that space. But what I love about mental wellness coaching is that when you need to do a check-in, and you need to actually look at what you're currently going through in order for you to transition into the next level, change perspective, change direction. You know, you might be aware that, you know, the way that I'm thinking is not always positive, but I don't know what to do with it. You know, I am not feeling suicidal yet, or I'm not feeling like the world must end, but I just don't know what to do with these creeping thoughts of, you know, the world is not good enough. And when you go to a mental wellness coach, you're with somebody that can actually look at what you're currently feeling, or you wanting to change perspective and direction on a certain topic in your life. Therefore, a mental wellness coach has place in that. And also, I love the fact that it's so interactive, because when we realize or know that, you know, or see that maybe this is a high medical conversation that you need to have, we always refer. You know, it's not a matter of doing it one linear perspective. And also, sometimes you can have dual. You can be seeing a psychologist but also seeing a life coach at the same time, because what we deal with are two different things. But I love the mental wellness coaching space because, like I said, for me, it's about the cleanse. It's about understanding that sometimes you go through experiences and traumatic stuff that may happen, or not even traumatic, but things that you need to just get out of your system in order for you to function again. You know, one of the examples I love giving is because there's a client of mine that said to me, you know, Pride, when we went through COVID, I didn't realize that I actually had lost so much, and I was trying to carry on with life. But I was not functioning at a high level. I was not functioning in the way that I always wanted to function. I didn't understand it until we had a life coaching, a mental wellness coaching session, right? And in that session, I was able to unpack myself. And in that session, I was able to cleanse. In that session, I was able to unlock myself from not being able to be high function anymore, and seeing myself go back to being in the state that I used to be before. I'm even dreaming bigger. I'm even feeling better because I had a chance to mourn. I had a chance to go through myself in that session, and nobody was actually telling me what to do. I was the one who was in charge of the session. I was the one who was actually taking out things inside of me that I didn't know were in there. And I didn't know that I was feeling the way that I was feeling, but I did have a mental block. So there is space for everybody in the mental wellness space, whether it's in the psychology space, you know, which is high medical, dealing with the past, whether it's in the coaching space, which is very current, looking at what's happening in your current space, but also helping you transition and jump to the next level of your life from a mental perspective and also from a life perspective. And that's why I love the work that we are currently doing. And in the mental wellness month, you know, it's so important for people to actually check in and see where they are mentally, so that they can actually perform at high level the way that they've always seen themselves to, and also get that validation that they've always needed but didn't know that they have it in themselves to actually validate themselves.
Yeah, because like, just to add on to what you're saying, you know, like it all happens internally. And I think sometimes we sort of look for those validations and thinking that something that is outside of ourselves is going to be something that then brings us whatever joy and happiness and whatever next level is for us, you know. And sometimes it's about turning inward and looking inside of yourself and sort of assessing and sort of, like you said, having a check-in and kind of looking at what thoughts and beliefs and mental blocks you are currently holding on to that are limiting you from jumping onto the next, you know, level and being like a better version of yourself, or accomplishing whatever it is that you want to accomplish. And I was just thinking as you're also talking that, you know, what you said about everybody having a space and like a space where they belong. So psychologists and sort of medical professionals who deal with people who are really unwell, and then, you know, other professionals coming in at different points. And I always say that mental health for me is almost like it sits on a spectrum, or you can think of like a pendulum, you know, like swinging from one end to another. So as we go throughout our lives, because mental health is something that we all have, like you can swing from a place where you are well and you're doing okay, and something can happen in your life. It could be in your career, it could be at home. Like, events that happen and come up throughout our lives can sort of like affect us with our mental health, and it could swing the other way. And then you can be at a place where you are not well and you need assistance and you need help. And that is determined, like whether you need a psychologist or a coach or whatever, is determined by how unwell you become, right? And I think that, like you said, like earlier, you said something about, you don't have to let it get to a place where it becomes really debilitating, and it's you sort of like need that kind of assistance where, you need to go to a hospital or something like that. It can be that something happens in your life and it's the onset of the thing that is happening. And if you sort of like work through it, maybe with a coach, you could deal with it at that point. But sometimes we sit and we repress and we let things fester inside of us, and they get to a point where we become really unwell and our mental health is affected negatively. So I think that brings me back to the idea that, like, it's something that people don't or might not believe that they have control over. Like, your mind is something that you can work with. It's not fixed. It's not you were just born this way and that's it, and there's nothing you can do. And also to sort of touch on the idea that even when people are, like, I always make a distinction to say you can have good mental health even when you are diagnosed with like a mental illness. So you might be somebody who struggles with depression, but you can work on yourself to get to a place where you use resources and have strategies that you employ in your life to have good mental health. So that's something that you hold with you and you carry with you, whether it's depression or anxiety or whatever else mental illness may be diagnosed that, like, you kind of received at some point in your life. But that does not stop you from having good mental health. And I think when working with a coach, that's something that can come in to help you develop how do you get onto a path where you are able to develop strategies that work for you to enhance your mental health so that it lives in a place of wealth and strength rather than something that's debilitating and is seen as a weakness,
So I really love that part of enhancing your mental health and mental wellness so that you become wealthy in how you're thinking, wealthy in how you actually see certain things, because that's what it is. Our mind is such a powerful, powerful thing. And I think for a long time, we never really took cognizant of what we were feeding our minds, but also what we tell ourselves, because everything starts here. I always say to people, your vision, God speaks to you through the mind. God speaks to you through what you see in your head. And so many times people will say, it's no le one le, let's see, uyahlanya, or because when you are so invested in what you see, you actually just want to act it out, right? And that is whether you're it's a big dream that you have that God's put in your vision and put in your mind and therefore put in your heart. You actually do what you see, right? And so it's so important to have healthy vision, right? To have a healthy mind, because what you see is what you will do. What you're thinking about and what you're meditating on is what you will then act out in the world that you're in. So it's important for you to have that check-in, to also understand why you're thinking the way that you're thinking, or what you're actually thinking and what it actually means for you. And it almost feels like mental wellness coaching is almost like that gatekeeping of understanding. So even when you have like a big vision and a big dream, and I always say to people, now more than ever, be aware of the people that are around you. Be aware of, we're always talking about tribes, we're always talking about, that's so important, because the people that are around you share the same values, share the same goal sets, similar, not directly the same, but similar vision and values around you. And that will impact how you actually think and how you show up for yourself and the people and things that are around you. So it's so important to be aware of how you're thinking, the conversations that you're having, and therefore if you feel like at any point that you need to elevate in a certain way, that's when a life coach can actually step in, a mental wellness coach can actually step in to help you elevate to a certain degree that is, you know, healthy for yourself, so that you're also able to take out any pollution that might have come in, or you're actually able to then, you know, start planting. So it's like the unlearning to learn, you know, it's unlearning certain things and learning certain things that are important for you to be able to show up and act in a way that is healthy for you and the people that are around you.
So powerful. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was mental health in Black societies or Black communities. You know, I've always found that when I talk to my little like online family in Mental Pulse, that when we start to engage about mental health topics, it's always such an interesting topic and so many different perspectives come to light. But one that always sticks with me is how there isn't an acceptance of mental health a lot of the time when it comes to Black communities, because it's almost like the difficulty that somebody is facing might want to be attributed onto something else. And I always found that to be a very interesting perspective. And I thought I'd bring it up and sort of like hear your thoughts and on the topic.
I come from a family where we've had like, you know, a few people that have suffered from mental wellness or anxiety, depression, and the likes, right? And I found that it's a very sensitive topic to me, because I feel like people don't understand mental health, you know, especially in Black communities. And for a very long time, you know, people ostracize you when you are doing anything that seems different from everybody else. And they don't take the time to understand what could be the issue or what is happening. And we laugh, you know, if we see someone saying something different, doing something different, we laugh about it, you know. And it's it'll still take us some time, and we need a lot of education in the Black community when it comes to mental health and mental well-being. Also, I think another thing for me is that we don't take care of each other when we're in that mental space. We don't take care of each other well enough. There's so many people who get beaten, you know, because all of a sudden, you know, you woke up one day and your mind was breaking down and you decided that you might walk outside not clothed, you know. And I know I'm going into deep spaces right now and I'm talking about deep things, but these are things that are actually happening. So it's still a very sensitive topic for me when it comes to mental wellness and the Black community. And also I think that we've been taught not to take care of ourselves mentally like that. You know, it's okay to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, bath, by 5 o'clock be on a bus and be working long hours. And if you complain about it, or if you're feeling tired or overwhelmed about it, then you don't work hard enough. Then you're not trying hard enough. And when you feel like the world is, you're not, you know. So we have still been put in a space whereby, and I say I talk about mentally, you know, mentally, we still in that space where, you know, if you're not doing it like hard enough, then you're not doing it. If you're not struggling, then, you know, you don't know what hardship is. You don't know what it means to get things done, you know. We need to be softer on each other. We need to be more understanding towards each other, because our mental health is actually, you know, our well-being, and it is actually our life, you know. So
very important.
Yeah.
Like it reminds you of something I heard recently, and like, you know, this idea of what you're saying, that like, you know, people wake up and at sort of like early hours of the morning, get ready to go to work long hours and whatever, and the minute you then complain and say I am not okay, it's like, but at least you have a job. Like, you know, if you're in an unhappy marriage, but at least you're married. If you are like going through something and you have, like, you know, somebody will be like, but at least. And it's so disempowering, I think, when we get into spaces of saying that to people, like, oh, but you think you're struggling, but at least you have this thing that you can lean on. And it's like, no, but does it have to be this or that? Why can't I have, good mental health and a good job and like a good family situation and all these other things? It's like, I can't just be in a situation where I just have to choose one. It's like, that's it, choose one for the rest of your life and then don't complain about it. That is not the quality of life that we're supposed to be living in accordance to.
You're absolutely right. It's the quality of life, but we've made the quality of life about struggle. And if you're not struggling, then you're not doing it right, or you're ungrateful. And if you're saying, I actually have a problem, or I'm feeling this way about the process of struggle, then it's just like you're not good enough, or you're not trying enough. You don't know what we had to go through. You don't know what some people are going through. But actually putting up our hands and saying, hang on, I'm struggling right now. I am finding it difficult. I need support. And that's where validation comes, right? We validate ourselves in the struggle. That's where we think what we're supposed to be.
Mm.
But and I think that's where the anxiety also comes, because your whole being, God is telling you, you are also telling yourself, no, it's not supposed to be like this. That's not how I'm feeling. But the rest of everybody around you and the world is actually telling you, no, you're being ungrateful. No, you're not fine. And so then you become anxious about eventually being okay, when you should just be okay, when you should just be not going through the struggles that you're going through. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be struggling in life, or struggle is, it's another word, but you shouldn't be having challenges. But some challenges should not be taking your a mental toll on you.
Should
They
not be
shouldn't.
debilitating. Yeah. Like we face challenges and we face struggle. And I think when we are in a place of being mentally well, and we are living from a place of being okay, we are able to face adversity and uncertainty and struggle and challenge and all those things. Like, it's not to say that life is like an easy path and like, it's all rainbows and sunshine all the time. I mean, you are going to get into spaces where things are challenging, but it's about when you work on yourself and you get to a place where your mental health is at a place where it's well enough, you can face adversity and it's not something that's going to be crippling. And I think that's the idea that, we need to get into spaces where we start having these conversations more and sort of start equipping people with tools and resources that they're able to sort of take on board, so that when they do face struggle and adversity, their mental health is at a place where they can deal with it. Like you mentioned the example of COVID earlier, like no one knew we're going to face a pandemic, at specifically at the time that we faced it. But if we're living in a place where our mental health is okay, then we are able to take on the challenge. If we're a business owner, we're able to pivot and move, and so that like our business can sort of like still function in that space. If we are like, in family situations and all of a sudden your kids are out of school and then you kind of have to like do school in a different way, if you are in a place where you are able to handle adversity and change and challenge, then it doesn't become too overwhelming. It is still hard. It is still like, challenging, but it is not overwhelming. It's not something that then you're going to just want to feel like, no, I can't do this. I need to check out of life because this is too hard. And that is what mental wellness, or the journey towards mental wellness, is about.
Sure. And I think that's such a powerful thought that you're saying, that life does have adversities, life does have challenges, but when you're mentally well, you're able to tackle them. You're able to take them on, still with a smile, knowing very well that it's a challenge, but your mental conversation and your mental thought is still for light, and it's still positive, and it's still about seeing a positive outcome throughout the challenge and throughout the adversity. It is when you start thinking about checking out. It is when you start thinking, you know, I'd rather not be in this life, that the conversation of mental wellness, you need to start having that conversation, because, you know, life is not meant to be easy, but it's also not meant to be like a struggle. And we should not be validating the struggle of, you know, you're in a marriage where you're being beaten, but don't worry, you know, it's the first 5 years of marriage, it's the first 2 years of marriage.
Yeah.
That's not it, you know, because then we are actually allowing this person to break down, you know, emotionally, mentally, and then we also are validating that this is the behavior that's supposed to be taking place and happening in life, when actually no, it shouldn't, you know. So it's so important for us to bring our mental health into a healthy state, so that also you're able to make the right decisions for yourself, for your own well-being, because that's the most important thing at the end of the day, being able to get to a space where you're able to make healthy choices that will actually preserve you and preserve your life long term. And that's very important.
Yeah, so important. And I just wanted to talk about mental health and women, like women's mental health. You know, I think women sometimes are faced with a different set of challenges. And I think the difference between women and men is dynamic, and it's what makes life interesting. But I think the challenges that women sometimes face can be so can live in a space where they can feel overwhelming and debilitating. And I think we're from a history where women have not always been validated, you know, and I think we carry that with us. Like we come from a generation of people who face their own traumas. Like, you know, we have our own mothers who have faced their own adversities and struggles in life, and that's something that they might unwillingly, you know, pass on to us as things that we then also carry in our own lives. And I think when we talk about women and mental health, or like women's mental health, that has been something for me that has come to light, especially in sort of like recent years, as I've sort of, you know, like been an adult, sort of looking at my own life and my mother, and sort of like thinking about the kind of women that I want to be and the kind of women that I'm becoming. And I just thought that that's something that could be interesting to touch on, to sort of see what's your perspective on that.
Such a very powerful question. And I almost want to say, for me, it's both men and women, you know. The reason why I say that is because women have struggled with their own mental identity in the new age. You know, women have always been seen as the pregnant and barefoot in the kitchen kind of woman. And now we are expected, and we expect ourselves to show up as the, you know, the businesswoman who's able to, you know, bear the children and take care of business, like Beyonce says, right?
Yeah.
And that's also, it can be very disempowering, because when you don't have the support and the mental support, you know, in a household, because of gender stereotypes and roles that have always been played, women, then their mental wellness deteriorates. But also at the same time, we take on this alpha female role that also breaks down the male role in a household, you know. So it's so interesting right now, because there's so many codes that are being broken down, you know, so many codes. And when I talk about codes, I talk about the households codes that have always been like the norm, you know, the man is the head, the female is the neck, and, you know, that kind of vibe, right? Whereas now things have shifted in the household, where you found that the woman is like the, you know, the breadwinner, or the person that actually earns the most. But that also then affects the mental state in the household. But at the same time, the woman's mental wellness can be broken down when the man is also not feeling validated, or feeling like, you know, he still can stand as a man, and it's about the pocket. So the reason why I bring both in is because we still have an identity crisis, right? We still have an identity crisis, and more as we are trying to redefine male and female roles in society currently, it is so important for us to also in households be able to look at, you know, where we are in a I'll talk about marriage or couples or things like that, where we look at ourselves and say, okay, where are we and what is happening in our household, right? Does it mean that now that maybe the wife is earning more, she's working more hours, she can't do A, B, C, D in the household? And what does it mean for her partner? Does this then mean for the partner that they now need to almost shift roles in the household, but also still support each other in understanding that what we are doing does not take away from the fact that I'm male and you're female? It just makes that it's so that our household can be elevated and our household can be taken care of. And that means we also have to break down certain gender specific roles in a household that will allow us to support our household, our kids, and us in a very healthy way. So it's so important, because so many things are being broken down and so many codes are being broken down, and so many households, marriages and the likes are breaking because we still having power struggle. We still having that I'm male, I'm female kind of thing, I've risen as the female kind of vibe, that we are then forgetting that at the end of the day, why we did what we did and why we came together is so that the partnership can continue. And yes, the partnership maybe from a society perspective does not look the same anymore, where the male is just the head and the female is just the neck. But it actually means that the partnership needs to grow and there needs to be strength. And the level of respect that needs to happen within a household now needs to be, you know, elevated even more, where we just respect each other as human beings, and we respect each other that we might be feeling, because feelings are very valid. You know, if you're feeling like you are, you know, you're not being taken care of, or you're feeling like I'm lost in the space, or I'm not sure what's happening with us, it's important for people to then start communicating. It's important to have those open conversations where we're talking about these things, because that will help support each other in a mental space, in a mental wellness space. You know, yeah, conversation. So that's why I say, for me, it's about both, you know, because a lot of men, I mean, I speak to a lot of guys in the coaching space as well, who actually feel lost, who actually feel like, you know, I mean, I was looking at the suicide rate the other day, and men's suicidal rate
because
down.
September was Suicide Prevention Month, so yeah,
you know, so men's suicidal rate is higher than females, and we need to ask ourselves why, you know. And we need to also be sensitive that there's so much change that is happening, you know, that we need to support both males and females, you know. Gone are the days where we just talking about females need to be empowered and because we've started that notion and the ball is rolling in that direction. And yes, I do agree, you know, some people might be watching this and saying, no, it's not enough. And maybe it isn't enough, but also we need to take a step back and say, what is happening to the male counterpart at this point in time? You know, why are they still so violent? Why are they still you know, being so suicidal? Why are they feeling the way that they're feeling? What support can we put in place for the man to actually step up? We've said women step up, and we've seen women step up. We've seen women changing household, breaking down certain stereotypes, you know, standing against certain things that have happened to them, and we'll always be standing for those things. You know, we've seen the feminists, but we also now need to go back and say, okay, cool, you know, what happens to the man? What happens to people? Because that's what we are at the end of the day. What is happening to people?
I was just thinking that as you were saying that, I'm like, you know, what you're saying is so powerful, because it goes beyond the male and the female. Because when we start talking about one over the other, it's almost like we're negating one over the other. And it then makes it seem like a competition. Like we can't ever be in a space where both are considered. And it's like, if we don't consider both and we just consider one, it's like we'll end up having conversations and coming up with solutions that only fit one group without the other. And so as you were talking, I was just thinking to myself, it's about the human experience, right? It's about, not about the male, the female, but about the human experience. And when we start living from a place of equality, then we start living in a place where both are considered, and moving forward, both are supported. So it's not one over the other. And that is really important, because if we are going to find solutions to the problems that we are facing currently as a society, we can't look back to how problems were solved in the past, but we have to look forward to how do we solve problems in the present so that our future is different. Otherwise, we're always going to be people who are doomed to reliving the same mistakes that we've always, you know, and like we've always made, and sort of reliving our history in the same way. So I think what you're saying is very powerful. So
I also love that. I love that you're saying it's about the human experience, because we all had to experience life, right? And I think for a long time, and look, by all means, I'm a feminist, right? I believe in the empowerment of women. I believe in women, right? I really am. I really, really am. But doing the work that I do as a mental wellness coach, I've noted and I've seen and I've spoken to guys, you know, who actually feel like we get it, we understand that women they've arrived, but what about us? And I think a lot of men also are struggling with the idea, their identity first and foremost right now, but also I are struggling to get support in understanding that now that this woman has made it, how do I as a man show up? And that's the work. And we constantly are asking them to show up, protect us, and they still need a lot of support in that space, you know. So it's very, very important to just take a step back and just realize that the human is evolving. And when we start talking about humanity evolving, we talk about both males and females, and then we start putting things or interventions for both males and females so that we can have the healthy society and a healthy mindset by both males and females. Because the mindset of the male, you know, looking at the rape statistics and all of that, is really, really, we see that it's polluted, you know, a lot because of the struggle. And I'm not saying, you know, one will fix the other, but I'm just saying that we just need to also take into consideration of both, not just one over the other.
Yeah, like finding balance in how we support both. Very powerful.
And I think that it's so important, the type of work that you're doing with Mental Pulse and also as a mental wellness coach is so important, because as we both highlighted in this conversation, is that for me, it's so important for people to cleanse their thinking, to cleanse their mind, but also get to a state where they are allowing themselves to have healthy thoughts and healthy conversations with self, because it all starts with you, you know. And I think the most important thing for me is, as you think, so you are. This is a scripture in the Bible for me. And so it's so important for people to understand that, you know, what you want and what you want to achieve for your life starts here. And once it starts here, the thoughts that you think on a daily basis actually become part of your heart. You know, it becomes what your passions are. And when we have the right belief system and work on, you know, cleansing the subconscious mind so that the conscious mind is aware, we can actually start living more fruitful life. And like you said earlier on about, you know, making healthy mental decisions because you are in a healthy mental space.
So thank you so much, Coach P, for today. The conversation was amazing. It was enlightening. It was empowering. And there's a lot to take away from everything that you've shared with us today. And I'm just so excited to share this with everybody, and like for all these little nuggets of knowledge to be enjoyed by everyone.
Thank you so much, Coach. Yeah, I also really enjoyed this. There's still a lot of conversations to be had around mental wellness, and also for people to actually just step in and come into, you know, a coaching session so that they can understand and see where they are in terms of, you know, mentally. They don't have to be going through it by themselves. And it actually just really, really helps to cleanse, you know, ukapa. I always say, you know, to just talk about where you are in your mind so that you can get the help that you need, because our mind is a storehouse and what we think we become. So that's very important for me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.